For those of you who don't know me, my name is Steve. I've been teaching at Yoga One Studios for almost 10 years, which I can hardly believe. And I am offering this, we are offering this as an opportunity for people to either be introduced or refreshed in the art of meditation and this particular kind of meditation called mindfulness. Just so you know, if you join late or you wish to review this after the class, Meg will be emailing each of you a link, so you'll have access to the recorded version of this. I think that lasts for a week, so you can go back and look at anything incredibly profound that you found that I had to say. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my own story first, not because I'm that interesting, but because it's probably fairly germane to the reason that I'm here, certainly, and perhaps the reason that a lot of you guys are here as well. I was introduced to meditation in what I call my dark days, which was about 20 years ago. And I had the nerve to walk into a Buddhist meditation center one morning after having gone through a particularly bad time. And that was my introduction to meditation. What we call mindfulness today has been active in the Buddhist world and to some extent even in the yoga world for many hundreds of years. And we'll talk a little bit about what mindfulness is and what you might expect from it if it's not familiar to you at all. I'm going to start sort of from ground zero, not knowing exactly where you guys have been in your journey in life and whether you've had any exposure to meditation. My own experience in teaching meditation is a lot of times when it's the first words out of somebody's mouth, that's when people turn around and run the other direction. And so one of the things that I hope to do beyond exposing you to this particular segment of meditation is to provide you a little less of the scare factor and maybe a little interest to either add this to your repertoire in life or to perhaps revive it if it's something that you've done occasionally or haven't done for a long period of time. So we'll be here on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 4:30 with this free class from now until, well, for as long as this lasts. Figure out how much that is or how long that is. I will bring forth the definition of mindfulness meditation that is credited with its sort of modern day founder. It's a guy named John Kabat-Zinn, and he has done a tremendous amount he's a Buddhist guy by background, and he's sort of took the meditation of Buddhism and brought it into a much more contemporary context and then presented it. And now he has training centers worldwide, and he's in probably virtually every country in the world and has a bunch of trained teachers. I'm not specifically trained in his form of mindfulness meditation, but I have had a lot of exposure to it, as well as having my own experience in Buddhism and a whole lot of time sitting on a meditation cushion through the past couple of decades. So here's his definition of mindfulness. Mindfulness means paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. And I'll say that one more time. Mindfulness means paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. So there are lots of definitions of mindfulness, but this is the one by the king. So what mindfulness is, then to just assign some words to it is it is intentional, it's experiential, and it's non-judgmental as provided in the definition. So the thing about this idea of being non-judgmental is probably the most difficult thing that we all face. If you are a yogi and have done yoga practice, whether once or many times, it's the same thing that we run into in what we call asana practice or movement practice, is that we tend to want to assign our own sort of definitions, our preconceptions, our judgments to our experience. And so one of the biggest challenges and one of the biggest benefits of mindfulness is to allow us some room to release ourselves from this sort of preconception that we all put on ourselves as we gain experience or new experience in something that we haven't done before, or even, I suppose, something we've done for a long time. So non-judgmental suggests that we are working to create what's called a window of tolerance. And a window of tolerance is space, essentially. It's a space that allows us, when we say to or hear ourselves saying to ourselves, am I doing this right? I can't do this. All I can do is think. I'm uncomfortable in my seat. I have so many things that I need to do in life other than just sitting here. This isn't working for me. This is a dialogue that every practitioner, every mindfulness practitioner in the world goes through. And it is then our job simply to recognize that we're having this experience, that we're attaching these judgments, and to move beyond it. And we'll develop some ways toward the end of the day today that we can start to work toward that. One thing you have to understand about this is a function of training. I'm going to make a silly but accurate comparison. If you have been a couch potato for, say, the past 20 years of your life, and you wake up one morning and decide you're going to run a marathon, what you probably aren't going to have success doing is walking out the door and going for your first 20-mile jog. It takes a long time to retrain the mind to be able to sort of accept this space that we're talking about, this non-judgment. And so it doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen in a couple of days or a week. But what most people find is that if you're willing to put forth the effort for a number of weeks, let's say in a row, that one day what you will wake up and recognize is that something has changed, something's altered. And there's really no magic about this, but it is a very practical, I suppose, sort of magic that occurs as a natural result of simply putting in the effort. So my encouragement at the end of the day will be that you consider, if you haven't already, establishing a few minutes a day to do your own mindfulness meditation, and then of course joining us as we go along on our collective journey for the next several weeks, if it takes that, here online. So I'm going to give you a couple of things of what mindfulness is not. It is not an effort to try and relax. There are certainly meditation practices, many of which we do in the yoga world, which are designed to promote relaxation, but that's not the specific intent of mindfulness. It's not the idea that you're trying to push something away or that you're trying to escape reality. It's not that you're trying to transcend ordinary life and become some angelic spiritual version of yourself. You can go to Sedona, Arizona, if you want to do something like that. And it's not the idea that many people have, this conception of it being the elimination of thoughts. I can tell you that with the exception of the most advanced practitioners, nobody eliminates their thoughts. You may be able to slow them down. You may be able to create some space between them with practice, but stopping thinking is probably not a realistic goal unless you're willing to put forth a considerable effort, or unless, in some series of past lives that you've had, you have accumulated this ability to simply stop your thoughts. So that's not really what mindfulness is. And then, I'm just going to say this, although I find it a little silly. I do know that some people are concerned about it. This is not a religion. So this comes from a series of religious traditions, Buddhism being one of them, the yoga world being one. Yoga is also not a religion. And then virtually every ancient religious tradition incorporates some kind of mindfulness in it. But what we're not doing here is preaching. So this is a practice. This is a lifestyle. This is a way to make your life better over the long term if you choose to incorporate this and take it seriously. All right. So it's not hard. It doesn't take a lot of time, and it will, If you're willing to put forth the effort, change your life. And I don't think there's anybody I've ever met who has made a serious go of this who wouldn't be willing to say that. So applicable in these times because we're inundated, right? If you can stay away from your TV, your phone, your iPad for a day, I would be surprised. Everybody's sort of entrenched and involved in what's happening in the world. And what's happening in the world is certainly going to happen, and we shouldn't be ignorant of that fact or try and ignore it. But what we're trying to do with mindfulness is to create some sense of balance, to create a place where we can go for a given period of time during the course of a day to have an experience that relieves us, if you will, of whatever else we're being bombarded with in terms of information coming in with all kinds of opinions and facts and predictions about what could or will or may not happen. So without further ado then, I want to give you a quote that is one of my favorites. It's from a guy named Viktor Frankl, who wrote a book a long time ago called Man's Search for Meaning. He's a survivor of the concentration camps in World War II and subsequently became a psychologist or a psychotherapist. And if you've never seen the book, I would highly suggest it. It's really amazing. It's called A Man's Search for Meaning. But he says, in between the stimulus and the response, there is a space. It is in that space in which we find our choice and our freedom. In between the stimulus and the response, there is a space. It is in that space in which we find our choice and our freedom. We're looking for that space. We're looking for the ability to develop skills such that we don't necessarily have to become so enmeshed in what's going on in the world that we can't come back to ourselves. So we're going to do a simple practice now that will involve, we'll do it in sort of three parts or three different ways. But essentially, it will involve what's called in the meditation world an anchor. And an anchor is just something to which you can sort of root your attention for the moment and then come back to when your attention leaves. It is without a doubt part of our human existence that our thoughts move. There are predictions that we have somewhere between 40 and 70,000 thoughts in the course of a day. And then the joke is that most of those thoughts are the same. And it's not necessarily a joke. The reality is that between the way our minds are designed and the way that we use them, particularly in the modern world, we're always moving from thing to thing to thing. And so what we are offering in this practice of mindfulness is what we call an anchor, to be able to settle our thoughts into something for a moment or two, and then recognize that our thoughts are going to move. And then once we know that once we see that our thoughts are moving, we come back to this anchor. So I would ask you to find a comfortable seated position for yourself. Upright is good. Leaning back is not great because we want to have a posture such that we can allow a full and complete breath without having to strain or struggle at all. So it can be on a cushion or in a chair. I happen to be in a chair right now. Wherever it works for you, just find a place where you can settle in. If you are in a chair, hopefully your feet reach the floor, and I ask you to not cross your legs or anything, so settle both feet onto the floor. And then just let your hands relax on your thighs. And close your eyes. And first, feel the contact between the whatever it is you're sitting on and your sitting bones. So feel that sensation. If your feet are flat on the floor, bring your attention to the soles of your feet or soles of your shoes and feel the sensation of whatever your feet are touching. And then go ahead and just take a full breath in. And open your mouth and release the breath through your mouth. And do that 2 more times. A deep inhale. Complete exhale. And 1 more time. And then relax the muscles of your face. Soften your shoulders and your neck. And if you can, get the sense of just being established. You are here in this place. And this is your place. One of the things they often say in Buddhism is that your place is your throne. So settle into your throne. And accept that for the next few minutes, we will all be sharing our thrones together in this collective practice of mindfulness. And this is the place that you should be. You have a right. So 3 anchors that we'll be working with. The first one is sound. So you may be in a place where there is a lot of sound currently, or a place where it's fairly quiet. But I'd like you for a few moments to just relax into sound. So notice what you notice. Notice that some sounds are continuous. Notice that some sounds, like my voice, begin and end. Consider yourself for a moment to be a third-party observer. So you're not experiencing the sound so much as watching the experience of sound. This is the non-judgmental portion of this practice. To allow the sound to occur and just notice without attachment of judgment, analysis. Sound. There. We had nonsense going on next door. This is where the non-judgment comes in, is when annoying sound interferes with a meditation practice. So that's our first anchor, is the anchor of sound. So this is one of three that, as beginning practitioners, we offer in mindfulness practice, is to start uh, to use one of these anchors and to uh, use it on a consistent basis, so that you start to get used to, allow your mind to get used to the idea that you're just focusing on sound and you're just allowing it to occur and watching it go by. So that's anchor number one. Let's try another, and this is a big one in the yoga world. It's breath. So the anchor of breath is one of the most common throughout meditation. And if you've been a part of yoga classes, at least those taught at Yoga One, you no doubt will be familiar that we use this frequently to sort of establish presence. So I would invite that you find a good manifestation of the breath for you today. It can change from day to day, and there's nothing wrong with changing it from day to day. Some people will focus on the sensation at the nostrils, or air flowing through the nose, in the throat, the expression of the breath in the chest, or in the belly. I would only ask that as you play with this a little bit when we do this together, that you settle on one, settle on a favorite just for today. And then the next time you practice, if you choose to use the breath as your anchor, that you then can switch to a different manifestation of the breath. All right. So go ahead and settle in again. Eyes closed, soft face, relaxed shoulders, rooted into your seat, taking your place. And begin to bring your awareness to rest on your breath. It doesn't matter where you feel the breath. There's not a right or wrong. Just pick something where you can feel the sensation, the experience of the breath, and notice. Your mind will move unless you're extra special. And so, as you notice it moving, simply be aware of that fact and draw it gently back around to, again, rest your attention on your breath. You might notice qualities like temperature. You might notice the movement, the physical movement of body parts. If you're focusing on the breath manifesting in your trunk, chest, or belly, you might notice the sensation of skin against clothes as you breathe in and out. And then some people will ask, um, if you're familiar with yoga and you've been doing it for a long time, you may be familiar with ocean breath or ujjayi. And people will say, well, can I use ocean breath when I'm doing this? And the answer is, yeah, if it makes you happy, go ahead. So there's no really right or wrong to this. It's just having the experience and relaxing into it. One more anchor, and that has to do with tactile sensation. We're going to focus specifically on hands and fingers. And the reason for hands and fingers is that we have a whole bunch of nerve endings. Estimates go as high as 70,000 nerve receptors in our hands and fingers. And so there's a lot of potential for sensation there. So again, settle in, close your eyes, relax your face, relax your shoulders, take your place, and let your mind settle in on any sensations you feel in your fingers. You may notice temperature, pressure of whatever your hands are resting against. Perhaps air movement. Maybe even some energetic sensation like buzzing or tingling. And as your mind moves, just notice that. Draw it back. All right. So there we are. That, my friends, is mindfulness, first steps. So I'm going to issue a challenge to you, if I may. 10 minutes. Most of you, I think, are familiar with this little device. It has a timer on it. You take the timer, set it for 10 minutes, and then you take the phone and set it behind you so you're not looking at it every 2.5 minutes to see how much longer you have. And give it a try. Pick a anchor. It doesn't matter what your anchor is, and just give it a go. We will be back here again on Thursday, and on Thursday I think we'll talk a little bit about sort of the modern research and physiology surrounding this whole field of mindfulness, because our very own University of Wisconsin-Madison has a program devoted specifically to research, and they've come up over the past 15 or so years with some really interesting conclusions about what this really does for us and to us. In the meantime, once again, you're more than welcome to view the recording that you'll be receiving a link for from Meg sometime later this afternoon. Please feel free to take advantage of the other courses that we offer at Yoga One. I hope to see you again soon, and good meditating to you.